I'll stay married for the rest of my life. My name is Bruno Randazzo. Most people think of me as a nasty dude. I run my own construction business and made over $100 million last year. I'm a great businessman and proud of it. Most of my employees are union members. This costs me more in wages and benefits, but I make up for it by negotiating contracts that I might otherwise miss and no downtime on the job. I also have no problems with inspectors or permits. There are rumors of organized crime representatives associated with the union, but I know nothing about that. Several of my competitors have had accidents, equipment problems, and the like. I've been accused of many things because of this, but there's never been any proof. I am certainly innocent of any wrongdoing. Some people even whisper that I was the direct cause of several deaths. Of course, this is pure nonsense, but I find it to my advantage to keep the gossip going. About 10 years ago, I found it necessary to marry for business reasons. I acquired a trophy wife. There was no love or courtship in this union. She was a very attractive and classy girl who seemed interested in me. I was a good match at the time, so I had a lot to choose from. Unfortunately, I didn't do too well in the job. Although she met all my modest criteria, she turned out to be a less than loving wife. The only sensible thing I did was to enter into a strict prenuptial agreement. For the past 4 years, Betty has been trying to get a divorce. Of course, she's looking for more money. She seems to think that by making a miserable fool of myself, I'll be more inclined to leave her at any cost. I'm sorry, but it doesn't work that way. I was raised to believe that divorce is not the answer. Bruno, I can't put up with this shitty marriage anymore. What the hell do I have to do to get you to give me a divorce? We've discussed this before, and you know the answer. Come on, Bruno. None of us are happy, and there's no reason to perpetuate that unhappiness. Get a hobby or something. I'm not going to give you a divorce, and that's final. Well, what if I file for one? Then what? What grounds would you have? My lawyers will eat you up. I haven't done anything to justify this, and you know it. I don't hit you, cheat on you, or even verbally abuse you. Anything you can come up with will not stand up to any criticism. I'm afraid we'll be married until you're ready to collect Social Security. Damn it, Bruno. What if I cheat on you? Will you divorce me if I start sleeping around? No, darling, I won't, but I can assure you there'll be a couple of dead lovers around. Pretty soon word will get out, and they'll start avoiding you like typhoid. You're an asshole. You know that, don't you? She turned and left the room. I couldn't help but admire her beautiful, rounded ass as she slipped out of the room. As she walked, she swayed from side to side. Her dark hair falling down to her shoulders swayed back and forth in time with the movement of her buttocks. It was a breathtaking sight. She wasn't skinny like many trophy wives. She was seductive and slender. She had never seemed to have such a vibrant personality. If only her brain were as sharp as her tongue. I put that conversation behind me like so many others. I guessed she was up to something, but I didn't feel like sitting around waiting for it. But all good things come to an end sometime. It was a plain brown envelope of heavy paper. It was addressed to me, and there was no return address on it. I looked through it carefully because something didn't seem right. Finally, I opened it. Inside were about 20 pictures. They depicted my loving wife, Betty, making love to a large Hispanic man. After quickly going through the pictures, I sat down at the kitchen table with a cold beer. I very carefully arranged all the pictures on the table. It was kind of funny. I thought I was going to be outraged, but I wasn't. There was something strange, and the longer I looked at the pictures, the more I was mesmerized. After a few more attempts, I began to get a clear picture of what was going on. There was a third person involved because all the pictures were taken from different angles and were well focused. None of the shots showed the actual scene. My stupid wife imitated everything and showed me the pictures. The pictures were so fake that there was no way I could use them to prove adultery on her part because her lawyer would make me look like a fool. However, if I looked at them, got mad, went and killed that guy, I'd go to jail and she could take the money. Sneaky fool. All right. Now, who was this guy? I separated the photos so I could get a good look at his face. There were only 4, but it was clear enough that I knew who it was. Carlo Quartera was a Portuguese by birth who had moved here from Rhode Island about 5 years ago. He was trying to set up an earth-moving business in my neighborhood, using non-union labor and paying much less than me. He gambled, but it didn't work out. I drove him out of business in less than a year. Betty knew I hated the guy for meddling in my business. I can see why she chose him. For some reason, he stayed even when he lost everything. I was sure he'd come back to Rhode Island. Okay, I knew where to find him. So what do I do now? I ran out of cold beer. I went to the bedroom. I looked in Betty's bedside table. Her .25 caliber Beretta was there. I thought about it for a few minutes and decided I would use my old .45 caliber Army pistol. I still wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I couldn't stand being teased. The drive to Carlo's house took about 30 minutes. A tattered Chevy was parked in front of the house. It got very lively after that. Around half, I got home. I made my way into the kitchen. Betty was sitting at the table picking at her salad. I jerked open the cupboard drawer, threw a .45 caliber pistol in there, and slammed it shut. I had blood on my shirt and pants. I took them off and took them to the laundry room. Throwing them in the washing machine, I came back to the kitchen in my underwear. Betty, "What's wrong, honey? Are you in some kind of trouble?" I asked. "No, I'm fine. Do you want me to make you a sandwich? I'm going to take a shower and go to Porzio's for linguine. Don't wait up for me." As I left the room, I noticed a slight smile on my wife's face. Everything was going exactly as she had planned. There were several very important people at Porzio's that evening. In fact, they were there almost every night. I approached their table and paid my respects. I mentioned that I would be busy for a few weeks and that everything would be fine. I took a table in the corner and ordered a bottle of Rosé Lancer. I decided a Portuguese wine would be appropriate for such an occasion. I started with an antipasto. There was no hurry, and the evening promised to be long. They showed up around 10:30. 2 detectives in cheap suits came to my table. 2 uniformed policemen stood at the door. I smiled and rose from the table to greet them. "Bruno Randazzo, you're under arrest for the murder of Carlo and Luisa Cartera. You have the right to keep—" His voice got louder and louder, and I couldn't hear anything else he said after that. They led me out of the restaurant in handcuffs, and I smiled as they put me in the police car. What they didn't know was that my lawyer was already waiting for us at the police station. I've always liked to plan. The meeting at the police station went as expected. "Mr. Randazzo, do you know Carlo and Luisa Cartera?" My attorney, John Fermi, would nod if allowed to answer and shake his head if not. This time he nodded. I knew Mr. Cartera, but never had the pleasure of meeting his wife. "How did you come to know him?" "Some time ago, he started a construction company in the area that competed directly with my company. He was in business for less than a year, and then he folded." "So you had a beef with him?" "No, he went bankrupt. I settled my grudge and moved on." "When was the last time you saw him?" "About 6 months ago. Why do you ask?" "We believe that Mr. Cartera and his wife were murdered this morning in their home, and we have reason to believe that it was you who killed them." My lawyer leaned over to me and asked me not to say anything more. "What makes you think my client had anything to do with this?" "The Cartera couple were shot with a .45 caliber automatic weapon. We found shell casings at the murder scene. The striker markings match the striker markings on Mr. Randazzo's gun." "How did you come into possession of Mr. Randazzo's gun?" "That's not important at this point." "Of course it matters, and if I don't get an answer, we're leaving." "We also have a shirt belonging to Mr. Randazzo that has blood on it. We believe it's the blood of the victims, and we're waiting for the DNA results." "And how did Mr. Randazzo's shirt come to you? We're not going to cooperate unless you come clean with us. Where did you find the bodies, and do the bullets recovered from them match my client's gun?" "We don't have any bodies at this time." "So we're dealing with a murder in which no one was found. That's very interesting. What else can you tell us?" "We found a car belonging to the Cartera family in the back of one of Mr. Randazzo's construction equipment yards, burned to the ground." "Were there any bodies in the car?" No. "Why would my client do something like this?" "Because of the photos he got in the mail." I looked at John and shrugged. "I didn't get any pictures in the mail." "Gentlemen, either charge Mr. Randazzo now or we're leaving. You don't even have proof that a murder was committed, so you have nothing to charge him with. We still want to know where you got the gun and shirt that you claim are connected to the mysterious crime." There was no response from the other side of the table. John and I stood up and quietly, without objection, left the room. Leaving the police station, we went to John Fermi's office. John, you know I'm being set up. It looks like you are. Is that your wife? I think so. She's very anxious to end the marriage, and I think it has something to do with that. Bruno, if she gets you sent to jail, she can file for divorce and get compensation, even though you have a prenup. Someone must have given her legal advice. I'll take a look around. John, there's a lot more going on here than meets the eye, but I'm going to hide something from you. In some cases, the less you know, the less chance you have of getting into trouble. I'm going to tell you enough so you can protect me, but not enough to screw it up. That makes it hard, Bruno. What do you want me to do? Just keep me out of jail and find out who's helping Betty. It was morning. I walked into my office and Joe Stampy was waiting for me. Joe held a unique position in my circle of business associates. He was a facilitator and a fact-gatherer. I knew what he was here for. Bruno, tell me the latest news. It's simple, Joe. My wife is trying to put me in jail so she can divorce me and walk away with the money. How's she gonna do that? She set up a fake affair with Carlo Cartera and fed it to me so I'd blow my money and go kill the guy. Then I'd be in jail so she could dump me. What made her think you'd fall for that stupid shit? I told her if I ever caught her with another guy, I'd kill him. She realized I wasn't kidding and she's trying to use it against me. I don't get it. If that was the case, why is Frankie Donato still walking around? What are you talking about? Who the hell is Frankie Donato? Joe didn't say anything. He just sat there and then shook his head. God damn it. Bruno, I screwed up big time and I'm truly sorry. What the hell are you talking about? We all thought you knew about Frankie and that you were okay with it. We couldn't even imagine that you didn't know. Come on, Joe. Spit it out. What are you trying to say? All right, Bruno, but remember, don't kill the messenger. I gave him the nod. Frankie and Betty had been lovers for about 12 years. They were together before you got married and after you got married. They meet at his house about twice a week. Frankie even brags that he slept with Betty at your wedding reception before you took her to the hotel. You were drinking and having a good time, and Betty was upstairs having fun with Frankie in her wedding dress. Why didn't I know about this, Joe? Everyone thought you knew. It was common knowledge. They figured you didn't care. Hell, I don't think I even met Frankie Donato. How did she keep that from me for 10 years? I don't know, but that's why when you said you were going to finish off any guy she was with, I didn't understand why you didn't just finish off Frankie. We both sat like that for a minute. Bruno, what do you want me to do? Nothing, Joe. It's okay. Fermi's got the cops under control and there's no chance of it going to trial. I got a couple trumps up my sleeve. Tell everybody there's nothing to worry about. When I got home, my loving wife was waiting for me. What are you doing here? How did you get out? How did you make bail so quickly? Damn, woman, you ask too many questions. They didn't have enough evidence to charge me with anything, so they had to leave me alone. Bail wasn't even required. By the way, how the hell did they end up with my gun and shirt? Betty stammered a little. She was having a hard time answering that question. I don't know, honey. They just came to the door and asked where you were. I said you weren't home and they asked if they could look around. I was scared, so I just said yes. They found a gun and a shirt, and then they just left. I knew it was all bullshit, but I didn't go into detail. I went upstairs, took a shower, and slept for a couple hours. All the next week, I was busy at work. John Fermi told me that Betty went to Allentown and found a lawyer who told her everything she needed to do to set me up. John said the Allentown lawyer would no longer be counseling her. The results of the DNA test on my shirt came back. 3 different blood samples were taken. Mine, Luisa's, and Carlo's. The police still didn't have the bodies. It seems they also spoke to my wife again and asked her about the photos that supposedly infuriated me. She insisted that I had them, but since I denied it, she couldn't prove anything. This meant that the police had no motive. The police tried to gather evidence based on the shell casings and the bloody shirt, but it was pretty weak. Joe picked me up and drove me to Porzio's. There were several important people waiting for us, but most importantly, there was a new face there. I'd never seen this guy before, but he had an air of authority about him. Bruno, I'd like you to meet Roberto Costas. Mr. Costas has come all the way from Rhode Island to meet you. Nice to meet you, Mr. Costas. I haven't met many people from your area. Roberto smiled and shook my hand. Yes, but you have already met my brother-in-law, Carlo. Indeed I have. I apologize for all the trouble I caused him. Oh, don't worry. I'm not offended by his attempt to start a competitive construction company. I told him it was foolish, but he was a hard worker and thought he could do it in spite of you. What can I do for you, Mr. Costas? My sister Luisa is worried. I didn't hurt your sister, and I don't intend to hurt her. I know that. She's not afraid of you, Bruno. She told me you were very generous in sending her and Carlos on that Alaskan cruise. She tried to explain the circumstances to me, but I'm afraid it was too complicated for me to understand. In any case, I'm grateful for your kindness. Louise is afraid of your wife, Betty. She says she's a cruel and determined woman who can't be trusted. I understand. I hope the problem will be solved in a few days. By the time Carlos and Luisa get home, everything should be under control. I also bought them a new car to repay them for the trouble my wife caused. Thank you, Mr. Randazzo. My sister will be happy to hear that they can come back next week. I appreciate your cooperation and look forward to working with you in the future. We all shook hands again. Joe and I headed to my office. Okay, Bruno, now would be a good time to tell me what the hell is going on. The guy from Rhode Island knows more about this than I do. Joe, you gotta keep this under wraps for a while. I still got some business to take care of. Betty went to a lawyer in Allentown who told her what she had to do to get me sent to prison. Then she could divorce me bypassing the prenuptial agreement. Carlos and Luisa Cartera have had financial problems since I put them out of business. They were more than 3 months behind on their mortgage payment and were about to lose the house. Betty somehow found out about it and went to see them. She agreed to give them enough money to pay off the debt if Luisa would take some pictures of Carlos and Betty making love. They didn't make love, but the pictures indicated otherwise. Luisa said that Betty poured mayonnaise into a ketchup dispenser and splashed it on herself to give the impression that Carlos had achieved pleasure. Betty mailed the pictures to me, and I recognized Carlos right away. Then I realized the pictures were fake. I went to see Carlos and Luisa, and they told me the whole story. You went to shoot them? I did. I wasn't sure. The photos looked fake, and I just had to be sure. Louise got angry when I explained what Betty was trying to do. She didn't like the fact that Betty had set it up so that an angry husband would shoot them. It wasn't hard to get them to agree to help me. Does John Fermi know about all this, Bruno? No, but I'll let him know this afternoon. I had to keep him in the dark for a while to keep him out of trouble. What about the blood and the casings? I told them to take a small bag with them, but to make it not look like they were going anywhere. Stella from the travel agency had booked them airfare to Seattle and a cabin for a 3-week Alaskan cruise. They had plenty of time in Seattle to buy clothes with the $2,000 I gave them for expenses. I took a couple of old living room pillows and shot them 6 times, leaving shell casings on the kitchen floor. We threw the pillows into the back seat of the Chevy. Carlos and I spent a lot of time talking Luisa into cutting her hand, but she finally did it. All 3 of us got blood all over my shirt. I asked him to retitle the car to me and drive it back to my equipment lot in Mount Penn. After we set the car on fire, I drove them to the Philadelphia airport. When I got home, I hid the gun while Betty watched me and put my bloody shirt in the laundry basket. I was pretty sure what she would do next. Joe seemed impressed. The guys are going to be talking about this fiasco for a long time, Bruno. I won't say anything to anyone until you give me the go-ahead, but I think you'd better bring Fermi up to speed as soon as possible. After Joe left, I went to see John Fermi. For the next few days, I was busy with work. The whole situation was like a boil on the back of my neck. Eventually, it was going to burst. It did on Friday. Betty and I were sitting in the living room having a nice, quiet evening at home. She got up to answer a knock on the door and let 2 detectives and 6 uniformed police officers into the house. Bruno, these gentlemen have a search warrant, and I had to let them in. There was a smirk on her face that I desperately wanted to wipe away, but instead, I smiled to myself. My wife waited patiently for the police to find what they were looking for and bring me back to the station. About 10 minutes later, one of the men came down the stairs, carrying my wife's Beretta in a plastic evidence bag. I found it, Lieutenant. It was in the bedside table, and it had been fired recently. When I stood up, the detective turned to my wife. Betty Randazzo, you're under arrest for the murder of Frank Donato. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to... He finished the rest on the way to the police car. Betty looked at me as if she wanted me to help but didn't know how to ask. I stood in the doorway and watched the patrol cars drive down the street. No lawyer in town would dare speak to her. Her only hope was a public defender. Frankie Donato was found in his apartment shot to death by 8 rounds from a .25 caliber automatic weapon. Only Frankie and Betty's fingerprints were found in the apartment. On the kitchen table, they found 16 pictures of Betty making love to an unknown man. I didn't think they would, but they found some partial fingerprints on the Beretta. Turned out to be Betty's prints. Neighbors identified Betty as a regular visitor to the apartment. There was no lawyer to talk to her, and no bail bondsman to even consider the offer. The next day, Carlos and Luisa returned from vacation. They called the police to find out why their house had been marked as a crime scene in their absence. Shortly thereafter, John Fermi called to inform me that the charges against me had been dropped. Carlos and his wife didn't tell the police any more than they should have and refused to answer any questions after the first 10 minutes. They disposed of the police by expressing extreme anger and outrage about the whole affair. The cops decided not to gloss over the situation. Betty was in jail and only her public defender could talk to her. I went to see her, but she refused to deal with me. 2 months later, after a short trial, Betty went to Muncie prison for 15 years. She could have been released after 8 years for good behavior, but I arranged things so that would never happen. While Betty was awaiting trial, I started a new excavation company. It was set up to do small, non-union jobs with non-union employees. I convinced my companions that it would be good for business if we could both work independently, but under my control. Materials and other goods came from my regular suppliers, which made everyone happy. Carlos Cuartera was more than willing to take over this new division in my place. I knew he was a capable man, and I knew I could trust him. One sunny afternoon, there was a knock on the door, and the most beautiful woman I had ever seen appeared on the doorstep. "Hello, my name is Elizabeth Costas. My brother Roberto asked me to come and take care of you. Where do you want me to put my bags?" "By the stairs would be fine." I had nothing more to say. I just stood there admiring this goddess while the cab driver put the luggage on the floor. The cab driver left with a big smile and a nice tip. "What exactly does that mean? How do you think you should take care of me?" "To please my brother, you've deprived yourself of your wife's company. I will take care of your home in her place. I will accompany you to any social events you must attend and see to it that you are fed and properly clothed. All of your needs will be taken care of." That sounds like motherhood to me. "Have you slept with your mother?" "Of course not." "Relax, Bruno. Everything will be fine. If anyone asks, I'm just a housekeeper and companion. At night, I'm your wife. If you hurt me, you'll die like a little frog on a hot sidewalk. Do you understand?" "I think I'm in love." "I'm doing well now. Elizabeth and I go to Williamsport every month to visit Betty. Elizabeth likes Betty to see her when we come to visit. Most of the time, Betty refuses to talk to me. She has already filed for divorce while in prison, and I refused. I will remain married to Betty for the rest of my life, but I don't think I will ever live with her again. Every 2 or 3 months, she gets into some kind of trouble in Muncie, which increases her sentence. Elizabeth doesn't want to get married. As long as things go smoothly, we'll stay together. If at some point she decides to leave, I won't stop her. I really enjoyed my time with her, and I will remember it forever." The end.